Congresswoman, it's so great to see you. We just heard from Luis Martinez a little bit about the threat picture right now coming from Iran. Have you been briefed at all on that intelligence, and do you buy the threat the administration is laying out?
There hasn't been a comprehensive presentation of the intelligence that the administration keeps citing. This is something that's necessary for us in Congress to see. What we have heard so far has been shallow and superficial at best. What we're seeing instead are actions coming from President Trump and his administration, led by John Bolton, that are dangerously escalating us closer and closer towards a devastating war with Iran.
Do you think they're exaggerating the threat? Do you think, as someone who served in Iraq, you know well the lead up to the Iraq war, do you see parallels here? Is this something that our country may do? Okay.
This is the problem. You know, I've served in the Army National Guard now for over 16 years, still currently serve as a major, have served in Congress now for over 6 years on both the Foreign Affairs and the Armed Services Committees, and went through this same thing in Iraq, a war that was championed by people like John Bolton, who lied to us and the American people, saying, you know, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He's going to give them to al-Qaeda, evidence that turned out to be false. But that led us to a devastating war in Iraq that took over 4,000 American service members' lives, injuring many more, killing and injuring countless Iraqis, and strengthening terrorist groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda. The reality of what we're seeing here is it appears John Bolton is using that same playbook once again to lead our country into war with Iran, a war that the American people need to understand would be far more costly and devastating than anything that we saw in the war in Iraq. Costly on American lives, costly in terms of taxpayer dollars that would pay for this war, costly in the lives of the Iranian people and those in the region who would be dealing with the consequences of this war, what to speak of an exacerbated refugee crisis that we'd see across Europe.
The president says he'd be open, Congresswoman, open to talking to Iran and sitting down with them to try to defuse this. Would you be open to something like that if you were president?
Absolutely. The only way to prevent war is to have these direct negotiations, to have these meetings, whether they be with friends or adversaries or potential adversaries. It is in the best interest of the American people, our national security, and in the interest of peace to be able to have these engagements, seeing war ultimately as the very, very last resort. We are nowhere near that. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been any of these kinds of direct negotiations between this administration and the Iranian government.
Foreign policy, as you know, hasn't been a big topic yet on the campaign trail. That could change now that Joe Biden, of course, has gotten into the race. As you know, he's one of the front runners, and foreign policy is his strong suit. I know you're eager to have a debate on this subject. What distinguishes your foreign policy from his? Tell our younger audience what would be your calling card.
You know, like I said, as a soldier, I understand the importance of our national security and the huge responsibility that a president has to serve as commander-in-chief. I've also seen and experienced the cost of war firsthand, and am committed as commander-in-chief to end these wasteful regime change wars, the likes of which we have seen in Iraq and Libya and Syria, and which we are seeing this administration trying to push and carry out in countries like Venezuela and Iran. I would end those wasteful regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, and take the trillions of dollars that we have wasted on these wars and programs, and that will continue to waste unless we make this policy change, and invest those limited resources back into serving the needs of the American people. Things like healthcare, education, infrastructure, protecting our environment, affordable housing. The needs that the American people have are great. I would change our foreign policy to make it so that it is one that keeps the American people safe and that truly serves the interests of the American people.
Finally, real quickly, before we let you go, Congresswoman, we've got to ask you a question that a lot of the male candidates have been asked so far this campaign. You know, Joe Biden even the other day asked if he would commit to having a woman on his ticket. It seems to be the question of the week. What do you think about having two women on a Democratic presidential ticket in 2020?
I think that'd be just fine. I think most people in this country, the voters of this country, are most interested in looking at who is the best qualified to serve them as president and commander-in-chief. That's why I'm running for president and why I'm offering to serve them in that way.
Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman of Hawaii, a four-time Congresswoman, also Democratic candidate for President of the United States in 2020. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us on ABC News Live.
Thank you.